I saw my teacher, his name, and so much in his Torah. He wrote them in my heart and then made me his servant. I say, I love Yahusha. I love him. His living water. I love it. I love Yahusha. Oh yeah. I love him. Oh, oh, oh. His living water. Oh yeah. I love it. Don't you sidestep his words, just obey and believe. Don't you sidestep his words or his heart you will grieve.
Brothers and sisters, welcome to the Torah Talk Show with Lew White and Mark Davidson.
A Torah Institute production.
Hey, hey, good morning.
That's freaked out, isn't it?
Well, good afternoon. I have one burning question I've been waiting to ask you.
Yeah, what?
When you sent me that text, did you get my response?
Yes, because I sent you one back again and you replied to it.
Okay, but you didn't reply again, so I didn't know
Oh,
if you
okay.
were really doing, because your replies could have just been just because you were replying. I mean,
Oh, I
you were just
see.
sending me another message.
I
I
get it.
you know, these questions bother me.
How are you,
How are
sister? Yeah, good, very good. Yeah, that was great. I got an SMS connection.
Just flowing.
Well, I'm real excited to see you. I love you.
Yeah, you too. You're looking very well.
Yes.
I got the okay from my surgeon. He says I'm fine.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, I guess.
So, all
Yeah, amazing.
right, I'll let y'all talk. Love you. Bye.
Yeah, love you
Let
too.
me show you what. Let me show you what my new webcam looks like. I don't have a mirror. But look at this.
Yeah.
The little package. It's what it is a Logitech, and it's I had the model number. It's seemed like a C920 or 920, and somebody actually sent me enough money to buy one, and that was they were saying it, and they were saying, "What's going on with that camera?" So he sent me just enough money to buy this. Well, it was he and she. It was a couple.
Yeah.
So a new camera. That's great.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, people care. That's great.
Can you see yourself on screen? Can you move your camera a little bit this way? A little bit to your... Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So that,
It's on
that's great. That's perfect. No, a bit more back.
Okay. Is that better?
That's great. Perfect.
It's on top of a gum machine, see, and I could just turn the whole gum machine.
Yeah.
You know, that put a quarter in and you get a handful of gum.
Yep.
I'm familiar with that. If you could see this, it looks like a little gum machine with a camera on top.
Yeah. I'm using a music stand, so no judgment here.
Hey.
Yeah. Could make do with what we got.
Oh, yeah.
It's great to see you, mate.
Oh, absolutely. And I was hoping I'd be able to see you in the flesh without having to imagine it. You know, in a mohawk.
Yes.
Is that a mohawk?
No, it's one of those new styles where it's all just short and just growing it on top, and
Oh,
you know, it's all happening.
oh, that's kind of, you know, there's a lot of different variations of mohawk, and I had never imagined you with it, but I wanted to imagine it, and the reason why is because Adam had to get a haircut recently, and he said before he came over, he said, I don't know if I should come in just without, you know, because he had cut himself a mohawk, just like you.
Yeah.
It looks just like yours, really, right now.
Yeah.
And he was saying it's kind of a mohawk.
Yeah.
But now, if you were to put enough hairspray in that, you can make that baby
Oh.
really.
Yeah, this comes down to my mouth if I let it fall forward. Yeah, it's really long. So,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was going to say another strange thing happened this week. I had an email, and they said, "Do you wear tzitzit, Lou?" And I said, "Well, I have to be honest with you. You know what tzitzit are, right?"
Little tassels.
I think, yeah, it's mentioned in what they understand as Numbers 22 and Leviticus 15, I believe. Anyway, those two places, and then it's mentioned in the Nazarene writings as well, where Yahusha was, people would touch his tzitzit, the fringes of his garment, the tassels, and then he also spoke of them too when he said, "You guys are lengthening your stuff, making it all happening so everybody will see it." Well, of course, they're not for other people to see, but yeah, if they're sticking out of your coat or your shirt. But I do wear tzitzit, and I don't just put them on for this show. I put them on every day, or they're already on, but here they are.
Yeah.
And I wanted to tell you, someone else, a sister, sent me these, and they're beautiful. She sent a set for Phyllis too that looked really fancy. But look at this. They don't have to necessarily be, in knots.
We missed that. You have to go higher.
Higher.
Oh, that's it? Yeah. Oh, schmancy. They look pretty chunky, those ones.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I first read that in Numbers 22 and Leviticus 15. I just went out and got myself some cotton, cord from a fabric store, and I just tied the things onto my belt loops, and they were just blue thread. And that, I'm sure, was just as appealing to Yahusha, if not more so, than just the heart of a person that says, "I want to do that." People say, "Well, I don't know how to tie them," and well, just get some cord. Of course we have tzitzit available, but they're made according to Orthodox prescriptions, and they're not. Torah doesn't tell you how to make them, or what kind of shade of blue it is to Keleth. They say it's a snail that had a blue color, but I don't want snail stuff on me. Come on. But I don't. That's just me. But other people might want it.
Yeah, we just tied them. Got a piece of elastic and tied 4 onto it, and then you just pull it up, take it off.
You should have seen my first shofar. My first shofar was a piece of PVC. I just put together this, curved thing, and I stuck a mouthpiece that I fabricated out of other pieces of plastic. Yeah. I didn't have access to a ram's horn, but it was fun, And,
we last time we had a feast. I think Chris and Victoria found an air horn.
What kind?
That air horn, a horn stuck on top of a can, and it just alerts the whole street of your presence.
Yeah. Well, it gets the job done.
Yeah. Well, it's called shout, isn't it? Make a noise.
Makes noise. Shout. I mean, if they'd have had those cans when they were going around Jericho.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, on the 7th day now. Shout. And those air horns, if Chris was there, he'd have been there going, take that. What?
Yeah.
Let me show you a yoke.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a yoke. These are teachings. That's what a yoke is. You know how people carry a couple of buckets and they put it on their shoulders on a bar. Of course, you could think of 2 animals yoked together, but that's a yoke too. But when we have an idea of Yahusha's yoke, we have this for our yoke, and it's the instructions of how to love. It's the 10 Commandments, and we love these. And why do we love these? Somebody wrote them on our hearts, so we go, "Wow, I love that." Anyway, the first one is, "I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. Have no other before my face." Okay, that's easy. Number 2, you do not bow to images. Alrighty then. That's easy to do. Anyway, the third one, these are just shortened, but And then the number 3 is, you do not cast the name of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to ruin. That's easy. Number 4, remember Shabbat to keep it Kodesh. That means set apart from the rest of the common or profane days. Well, how easy is that? He says rest. That's what Shabbat means, to rest, cease. It also means to relax. So who can't relax? That's easy. Now, number 5, respect your father and your mother. That's pretty easy to do. Number 6, you do not murder. All right. A lot of people get by with that one and they say, yeah, that's very easy. Number 7, you do not break wedlock. Now that's a tough one. Unless you love your wife, and your wife loves your husband. But a lot of people do have arguments, and they have to get over them. But, never let the sun go down on your anger. And that's, make peace. Just acknowledge that, it's better for me to be wrong than for this anger. Anyway, then we have number 8. You do not steal. Okay. That means other people's property. You can't steal your own property, but if something belongs to your neighbor, you just don't steal it. You can ask him to use it if you'd like. Number 9, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor. You're always kind and treat your neighbor as you would have them treat you. So if you open your mouth and you start to say something, oh, I don't want to say that, because that's what I wouldn't want them doing that to me. Because if someone gossips to you about something, guess what? They'll gossip to others about you too. It's the source of the problem. Number 10, you do not covet your neighbor's wife or house or field or servants or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And number 10, well, that is number 10, but number 11, this is a tough one. This is a new commandment. Love one another, and that's from YAHUSHA'S mouth. And he said, love one another. Be careful. Don't just stop there. As I have loved you. That makes it really a high reach, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's the yoke. We carry that yoke because we've acknowledged that we can't do this ourselves, so we accept him. So, and it occurred to me a while ago that the new covenant or the renewed covenant is in our hearts. It's not written in stone. It's actually in hearts, and that's the renewal. Or if anything's new, that would be the new thing about it. It wouldn't be the covenant's new. It would just be that it's written on hearts by him, and it's nothing we do. But he writes a love for the truth on our hearts, and that's the renewed covenant. And it can be summarized in 3 words. Mashiach in you. That's it. So when we accept this is his character. Those 10 commandments are his character. And it's a yoke. And I wrote a recent article. It's called YAHUSHA'S Yoke.
Have you sent me that one? I haven't seen that one.
I think I sent you the attachment, a PDF. I'll have to make sure about doing it again later.
We had a busy week. Oh, that's exciting. Yeah.
Oh,
Get into
and
that.
it's really nice and fun. And I'm using a lot of scripture. That way I don't have to put too many of my words into it. But I'm giving you the mind of the Messiah's perspective of how we're supposed to behave. And when we do this, we find out that we bear fruit. There was a verse in Matthew 11 that's always been really difficult for people. And I sent you a Facebook, just recently, a Facebook message with this. It's Matthew 11, verse 19. And let me find it. It's pretty amazing. It's, let's see, Matthew 11, verse 19. There it is. He was talking about how he was contrasting and comparing what his operation was and his ministry or work was, what he was doing as compared with his cousin, Yahuchanan, or John the Baptist. And he said, the son of Adam came eating and drinking, and they say, see a man, a glutton and a wine drinker, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. And wisdom was declared right by her works. Now that statement right there at the end, and wisdom was declared right by her works. That's been translated in many different ways. But in essence, let's dismantle that little phrase, wisdom. What is that? Well, it's Torah. It's the thing we just finished reading, the core of the Torah. The heart is the covenant itself. It's a marriage covenant. And the thing that makes it really come alive is to spring forth into our hearts and grow into our minds, and then we behave as if Yahusha is able to use our vessels in such a way that we see everything the way he sees it. And we don't agree anymore with the way we used to look at the world. We don't want to control. We want to be controlled. So then we can love. And that's what these do. They teach you how to love Yahuwah, the first 4, and then the last 6, how to love your neighbor. And you don't steal your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's goods or covet them or lie to your neighbor or do any of that. You respect your parents and you don't murder people. It's just wonderful. You're looking for opportunities to help your neighbor all the time. And then by doing so, you're actually lifting yourself up because you're helping others. Well, that's the core of it. And I just think this yoke is a misunderstood thing. But in this verse, wisdom was declared right by her works. Her being wisdom is kind of reminiscent of Proverbs. You know, she is posted at the head of the streets. Her voice cries out at the doorposts. It actually says that. Well, why would her voice cry out at the doorposts? Anybody out there know? Well, you're supposed to write the commandments on your doorposts. In fact, these little things that double as bookmarks, you can write your own, but you can write them literally on your doorposts, the commandments. Like there's your first commandment. Let's write it on there. Or you can post it, in a little card you can print out and just stick it right there, so that your children can go by the doorpost and see it. And I mean every doorpost. If they're in your house, they'll be able to read them. And they're supposed to be on your gates, the gates of your city. Or if you have a gate, put it on your gate. So that's why Proverbs talks about wisdom, and it's obviously talking about Torah. Well, Torah is this message. This is the message. It's the tree of life. It's all sorts of things, but it's the instructions. That's what Torah means. So we've got this phrase, and wisdom was declared right by her works. Well, wisdom is Torah, and it's justified, or its manifestation through obedience. When you obey wisdom, then it's in your behavior, and you're performing wisdom. You're actually doing the commandments. That's what Yaakov or James is talking about. Do the word. Well, when this happens, the outcome or the results are the evidence of its uprightness and its purity and its righteousness. The outcome is going to show that to everyone, because they say, well, yeah, that would have been the best. So when people rashly respond in the flesh to a lot of reactions, and then they mirror the thing that's coming at them. If they're being attacked, and then they reflect that back, and it gets ramped up and ramped up. Pretty soon, people are shooting each other. Well, instead of that, if somebody's coming at you, and this is what Yahusha always was like, he would respond to violence with peace and kindness and forgiveness. What about that? And say, oh, I'm sorry, I must have offended you. And how can I make this right? Let me be humble. See, when you turn into a humble, a person that an angry person is coming after, then you would change the whole future of that problem, instead of trying to match it, And that's really important.
I had a question. I've started a couple of weeks ago going through your messianic scriptures in the BYNV just to get the whole experience of it. And I was, brilliant. Yeah. And I noticed when Yahukanon came onto the earth and he was immersing people before Yahusha came forth, why was he immersing people? Why immersion? Was he using Yahusha's name at that point? And if so, why, were they immersing people in Yahusha's name prior to, Yahusha dying and then the big Pentecost, all that, or what was the purpose of him? I mean, it's one thing to start saying, "Hey, there's a deliverer coming," but to actually get people and start immersing. Why immersion at that point? I was wondering why.
Well, it was always in the Hebrew roots of our faith. It was always a process that was involving water, mikvahs or tevilah, the act of immersing in water for purification purposes and a renewal purpose. And when a person was, for example, taking the Nazirite vow, he would bathe and shave his head and change his garments. And there was an outward sign of a pledge. The pledge was to repent. And that's what Yahuchanan was doing, or John the Baptist. He was giving people the opportunity to repent. He kept saying, "Repent, you brood of vipers." Yeah, and because he saw the uncleanness and the anger and the misbehavior, and the repenting means you turn around or you go back and change your direction, but you're not just willy-nilly turning this thing into a religion. You look at the Torah. You hear the Torah, you respond to the Torah, and you do the Torah. And you start over again with water, which is interesting because Peter, or Kepha, was illustrating immersion in comparing it with the out of water all things were created in the very, very beginning. And when the people went through the flood, there was a renewal. In the year 1656, A.M., Anno Mundi, the year of the world. In the second month, 17th day, Noah entered the ark on his 600th year. He was 600 years old. It's hard to believe. And he goes into the ark in the second moon, the 17th day of the year 1656. And everybody that was on that boat or that ship was delivered, was rescued from death, because everything else that had the breath of life in it died. So there was a renewal there, and so there was a protection given to them, and they were obeying, is what it is. You're turning from your sins, your transgressions, and you're obeying. So the very act that they were on the ship was obedience. It was a pledge. It was like, okay, this is it. I don't know what rain is. I've never seen it, but I believe it. So I'm going to do it. And that's really what that is. And then when Peter, or Kepha, was talking about that, he also went forward in time and said, and then they were all baptized or immersed under one name or cloud. The name was in the pillar of fire. And when they went through the water, and everyone that went through the water was delivered. And that was a mixed multitude of people. So that's what I think Yahuchanan was referring to. And then, Yahuchanan was doing things in a certain way that was going to get attention too. And it wasn't just the water immersions and the message that he had, but he was doing something else, I think. And that was, he was actually pronouncing the name. And this was drawing the attention of the rulers and the teachers of the rabbinical Judaism people, because that was against the law. And they were coming out to see what he was up to, because they'd heard that somebody was doing something out there that was involving some of the things that they didn't go for, especially the authority, because they were the authority and they were seeing a challenge. So this challenger had to be examined. And so the same thing happened to Yahusha. They were saying, where do you get this authority? We're the authority. The Nicolaitans. So I'm thinking that was probably what he was doing. But being a priest, because he was a descendant of Louis. He wasn't a Jew or a Yehuda. He wasn't of the tribe of Yehuda. He was of the tribe of Louis. And as was Moshe and Aharon and all those guys. See, they weren't Jews. There were the Yahudim, or the Jews, are the descendants of Yehuda, who is the fourth son of Leah, and she was a very graceful, but some say that she had sort of plain looks, She was. Some say she had weak eyes, but I think what that means is that she was not really pleasant to look at. She was just real plain. So when we see weak eyes, they have not been her weak eyes. It might have been, boy, I'm looking at that and it makes me weak. I'm not getting strong. I'm getting weak.
Not getting any pleasure out of that.
I'm getting the other before. I wanted the other. Well, I'm not really sure. I'm just making this stuff up, but I'm just sensing, what was going on with Leah, and I know that Leah was blessed. I mean, after all, it was through her that the Mashiach was brought forth. But she could have had bad eyesight, I guess.
Yeah. That's good about the immersion. So that was a common practice with the Hebrew people, the Yahudim, to
they understood.
Like from the temple with the brazen lava, that was all symbolic of that, wasn't it? The blood and the water, and that's what you had to do to come to the approach.
And then other people had to be immersed too. Like the guy that was the leper, that was the Assyrian general. He had to be immersed too. But it's always involving water, some kind of renewal, But it was related, I think, back to creation, because when Yahuwah was the spirit of Yahuwah, or the Ruach of Yahuwah, was hovering over the waters, there was nothing, it was no land, it was just waters. And it was totally dark. And people say, well, let there be light was the first act of creation. No, far from that. Light was created during the first day. On the first day, water was made. And Peter talks about that. The first thing to be made in creation was water. That was the creative act. And then he started messing with it. Well, not messing with it, separating it out and putting space between them. And then he said, let land come to be. Land was brought forth, of course. But, of course, light was created too. But you've got to understand the process is the beginning point is water, and all things are made from water and out of water. So it just got more complicated and more complicated until it was the way he wanted it. And then the next day and the next day he created it and started refining it. But these were literal days, as we understand, in terms of him. There was evening and there was morning. There was evening and there was morning. Well, the sun hadn't been created yet, but what he was speaking forth was evening and morning, darkness then light, just like the moon. It starts out dark. It doesn't start out light. A lot of people are reversed on that, but anyway, a day starts out that way too. When the sun sets, another day starts. And so then it becomes light, and then it becomes dark. And anyway, that's the cycle that we see in the beginning. But when the land came forth, and everything that came forth from the land, then Yahuwah was making something appear. So when we go into the water, we're basically dying and becoming, because everything that was under the water in Noah's day, and it was dead. But what came forth from the water was a really new thing. And that's what happens to us. We become Yisraelites or Israelites. We actually are covenanting with Yahuwah to obey his orders, his precepts, his commandments. So when we pledge to obey him as a wife, we become his bride. And we come up out of the water, a new creation. We're something new in his eyes, even if we don't see it right away. So when we get back to the Hebrew roots and understandings, they're very simple. They're not complicated or religious or anything like that. It's all tied to reality. But we're talking about the Hebrew roots. This is where we have to go to find the truth. And usually he's talking about his Torah. He says, you want to obey my word, my truth, the light. What is all this? What's the tree of life? What's this other tree? Well, these are the trees in the garden. They represent choices. That's what it is. And the serpent had an opinion that was different from Yahuwah. And he said, did Yahuwah really say this? And that's one of the challenges that we're seeing today with all these anti-missionaries and people that don't want to accept the truth. We're seeing a restoration now hundreds and hundreds of years, Nicolaitans have taken over and imposed their decisions. Their elders, their bishops, we call them, Nicolaitans, but they go by other terms, but they're not our enemy, see, the actual people themselves. We could say, oh, we don't agree with the Catholics. Well, it's not really the Catholics or the Protestants, but it's the teachings that we have to discern. And for example, one of the things that I have been going through lately is this. We have a lot of people that think Jesus is the name of the Messiah. And that was basically something that's been around for a little less than 500 years, that name. Before that, it was a Latin name. Now, who invented the Latin name Iesu? Well, the Catholics. This is the source of Jesus. Now, does this mean anything in Hebrew? Well, if we track it all the way back, we find that the Arabs in the 7th century called him Isa because of this. Not because of the name that was in the Hebrew, but because of the Latin. So the Arabs were seeing these Catholics and saying, oh, that must be the name of their prophet. Well, but that's based upon this too. This is the Arabic term. Well, if you track it all the way back and transliterate it into Hebrew and go all the way back, you find that it's Esau. It's actually a ayin, and then a sheen, and an ua. It's only 3 letters. Esau, Yaakov's brother. It's just 3 Hebrew letters. Esau, or Isu, probably. So Isu, this guy, see, it isn't really Esau, but it's Isu, because that's a u. Well, Isu, well, there it is. It's Catholic. But that's not it. That's not what his name is. What's his name? It's Yahusha. Well, let's see. I have a little thing here too. Yeah, this is his name as we understand it. Zechariah 3 is really going to tell you, but it's spelled, of course, going in this direction. Yod, He, Ua, Shin, Ayin. And it's pronounced Yahusha. See, the first 3 letters, Yahu, Sha. Sha means deliverance. Well, we've seen that before. A lot of people watching this maybe haven't. And then it went into Greek, but here's what they did. Because, see, they had a strict rule. After Babylon, they weren't supposed to be hearing Yahu. They don't want to hear it because that was the name. See, the name of the Creator. So they changed it a little bit to Eso, and they made the E and the O happen. And then, of course, the Yod. Asos. Well, here's the thing. This is Greek transliterated. And that's not his name either. It's, it's kind of getting close, but it's been mutilated and corrupted. Well, it isn't anything like this. It isn't anything like that. Then we have this H right that you see here is not really an H. That's just an unseal or capital letter for the epsilon. Well, it went into a code here, a Christogram. I call it a cryptogram. But they abbreviated it to IHS, the first 3 letters, see? And they love the Greek. They don't like the Hebrew, though, because it's the real thing, But then they started to invent, they took the first letter and the last letter and put it together, and they pronounced it in Latin with the S was a C sound, So they abbreviated this whole word in a cryptogram as just IC. And then Christos was, the C represents the S in the Greek. So you've got Christos abbreviated, so it becomes encrypted. And they call it a Christogram. And they put a little tittle, what do they call it? A tittle over it? A little bar above it to represent the fact that it was a name, just like the Egyptians did. See, the Alexandrian cult in Alexandria, Egypt, were kind of closely tied with Egyptology. And the bar in a a cartouche had a little line either under it or over it, and that represented a name. So when you're looking at a cartouche in Egyptology or whatever, it's encircled by a circle or an oval, and that also indicates it's a name. But then they also have a little bar under the whole thing too. You'll see an oval with a bar, and the bar means that it's a name. A lot of people buy that stuff as jewelry. What's my name? And they'll write it in hieroglyphics. But anyway, that's kind of cool to understand letters and customs and things like that. But let's not hide his name. I mean, come on. There was some degree of ignorance, of course, because people were running around in these places with vows of silence. And they couldn't just sit there at the end of the day and go, well, what were you working on today? I can't talk about it. It's a secret. Well, we'll just nip that in the bud and say nobody can talk. So they're not going to talk. Vow of silence.
When you were explaining Yahusha's name, it came back to me, how it's Yah is our deliverance. We were discussing the other day that the word deliverance has kind of been taken away from the text completely over the last however many years, and they've chucked this kind of useless word, salvation, in there. Like it doesn't convey the meaning of being delivered from something. Like the people who cried out and ran after Yahusha with evil spirits inside them, and tormented and cutting themselves, and those people understood what deliverance from evil meant. And it's kind of lost in these modern times that when you come to Yahusha, you are very much delivered from a big part of what's controlling you, a big part of what's flowing through your head. Maybe not all of them straight away, because as you read the Torah and you check your thoughts, you're cleansing it all the time, particularly coming into Passover each year. We're finding that big time right now. All of us over here, it's been a real heavy time. Discussions and arguments, and just coming into Passover, he's cleansing out all the leaven. And we just think it's, we don't eat unleavened bread. No way, he's like... And so that's what I want to say as well to all the brothers and sisters. If you're going through pressure, or you're wondering why there's like more pressure than usual, or more arguments than usual with your spouse, or like things that are arising, it's Yahusha. Yahusha's coming closer, and we found he does that this time of year, every year, to cleanse out the leaven, which is false teachings, bad behaviours. So we found that amazing. The deliverance, to be delivered from evil. Most of us don't even think we're evil to start with, but to be delivered, it just started rattling around when you started explaining his name. He was the embodiment of deliverance. He only just looked at people, and demons just ran for their lives. Like it's and he didn't even know about it. And people would run up and touch his zitzit, and who touched me? Like what's going? Like it was just, to be a witness of that would just have been phenomenal. And the way you've written it in the text, the new way you've written it in the order of the books, really. It's like going through it for the first time again. It's amazing.
Yeah, the order of the books, I've got like the Nazarene writings. We start off with Yahuchanan, the disciple whom Yahusha loved, and then we move into his brothers, Yehuda or Jude, and Yaakov, James, and then we go into Luke and Acts, which is the Acts of Yahuwah or Yahusha himself in his disciples. So we don't start right off with what people are familiar with, like Matthew, because they even though it's not there, they tend to believe they're reading about Christmas, and that is about. So we disrupt that right off, and we start off with the warning letters, and the light coming into the world, because Yahuchanan starts out just like it did in the very first book, in the beginning. It's awesome. So The whole thing is, it's a matter of a choice between the two trees. We've got pro-Torah and we've got anti-Torah. You know, we've got a snake over here, or a serpent, and we've got a tree of life, and of course this represents the 7 festivals. I had not realized this, but you know, some time ago when we were studying the meaning of the festivals and the meaning of the appointments, and I had asked Chris Koster back in the early 1990s, Chris, what do these festivals mean? Well, the question hadn't been asked that I know of at all. They represent something. They're shadows, the shadows of things to come. And they're redemptive shadows. They're about Him. We observe them, but we don't have to perform them in the sense that we've got to get this right. It isn't about us getting anything right. It's about recognizing what they mean, and what we, in the process of observing the time and just going through some motions, whether they're right or wrong, or that's not the point. The point is recognizing what they mean redemptively. Passover is the first one, you know, and then of course we have unleavened bread arrives, and then first fruits. What is first fruits? It wasn't until around 2008 that these things became focused and like laser beams, and we're seeing the edges of this outline, and we're saying the first fruits. That's His resurrection. It's resurrection, the first day of the week, and that He wouldn't let Miriam touch Him because He hadn't ascended to present Himself as first fruits. People have been saying, no, it's about the barley. No, it's not. The barley represented Him. It was a bikurim, and it's interesting because bikurim is the first fruits, and the very same word bikurim in Hebrew means firstborn. What? Who knew? We're seeing all these things, and why are we seeing it around 2008? Just like, bam, there it is. We see it. Well, it's because the captivity hasn't been ended, but the curse of the 7 times 7. Well, you get Ezekiel chapter 4, and you see that his name is Yehezkel. He's laying on his side, and he's laying on his side, left and right. One's for the house of Yehuda, one's for the house of Yisrael. And these are 390 days for Yisrael is the number of days for a year that they're going to have to be thrown out of the land. So they were pitched out of the land. This was a prophecy, of course, and they were pitched out of the land, and the curse could have been lifted, the captivity, after 390 years. But no, they wouldn't obey. So Leviticus 26 kicks in, and Leviticus 26 is, okay, if you won't repent, then we're going to make it 7-fold. 7 times 390 years. Uh-oh. 2,730 years. So, bam, there they go. From around 722 BCE, when their captivity officially started, then they were cast out into the nations, northern Israel, the 10 tribes, and scattered into the nations. So now, this is part of His plan too, though, is to sow us into the nations, like Amos 9 verse 9 says, and then call us out as a remnant to His covenant. Not to come back to the land. He does that. He'll do that at His coming. But we come back to His covenant. We say, hey, I love that commandment. Why is that? And then He's manifesting the reasons for it. And it's just wonderful to see it happening. All these teachers are waking up. Of course, there's a lot of teachers out there that are inventing misleading things. I don't think they're really of us. I think some of them are, worried about blood moons and things like that. But they're muddying the water with a lot of that because, hey, how many blood moons are there going to be? Well, after the tribulation, there's going to be a darkening of the sun. And then one blood moon because the sun's turned dark. And it's going to be reflecting its light on the moon, and it's going to look really dark. In fact, if you think these blood moons that we see regularly or anything, this is going to be really creepy, because the whole light in the solar system is going to go down. People are going to go, what? And it's going to be so dark. And then the moon is going to be really scary looking. I mean, it's going to make people, they're going to freak out. The tribulation, then the sun goes dark, wow. And then the moon is like red, like blood. And then, guess what? Then he comes bursting forth. And he comes back to deliver us from where we are, where he scattered us. There's a lot of news going on, like the retrial of Yahusha. Have you heard about that? They're retrying Yahusha in Israel, in Jerusalem. They're going to give him a second chance. And the guy doing it is Ariel Cohen. I heard about that this week. But
Because they want to accept him, or because they want to freshly deny him?
they just recognized that there was an illegal trial.
Okay.
They recognized it. And they're going, that was an illegal trial. Everything about it was done wrong. He was arrested in the wrong place and time. He was taken by night to stand before the high priest, and probably not the complete Sanhedrin. It was just a small scattered assembly, and that was illegal. You know, so everything was done in a rush, and it was probably the same conspirators, because we know that some of the members of the council of the Sanhedrin were believers in him. But yeah, there's a lot of things going on that are really spectacular. But then there's people out there falling for all kinds of. There's new stuff. I told you there'd be new stuff. The latest thing I've heard.
And we thought the moon was pretty crazy.
Oh, it's going on too. I mean, that's still dividing itself up too, because that's fracturing within itself. There's the lunar Sabbath, but there's not any one uniformity there either. But the latest thing I've heard is Jerusalem, or Yerushalayim, is lost. They don't know where it is. It's not really what they say it is. Not only are the people there not Jews or Yahudim, they're Edomites. What? You know, and like we're supposed to know this or care, you know, what does that have to do with anything? Well, anyway, he says, I'm going to call a people my people who are not my people. Well, maybe that might work there, but they're not my people, but yet I'm going to call them my people. All right, if he calls them my people, then what are we going to do? You know, are we going to say, they're not his people? You know, that's nutty stuff. Anyway, that's its own little nightmare, but they've lost Jerusalem. They don't know where it is. I don't know what happened. Everybody on the planet just went to sleep and said, oh boy, I'm going to sleep for 100 years. You wake me up. Well, everybody woke up after 100 years and said, where is it? It's gone. Well, let's just make this Jerusalem. It looks fine. There's a tunnel under it. That's one of the things I want to bring up. But the new doctrine is that Hebron is really the real Jerusalem. Hebron, right now, it's a Islamic, you know, place. There's a few Yahudim there that are, you know, they have to really guard themselves. But mostly, it's governed by, you know, the people that govern Gaza. But they're all, you know, Islamic. And Hebron is where the bones are, you know, where Abraham and Yusuf and all the patriarchs and their wives, well, they're all buried there at Hebron. Well, Hebron, if it was Jerusalem, then it would have the water channel there where Hezekiah, you know, dug a water channel. There's no water channel there, but there is one in the real Jerusalem. What'd they do? Build it there to make it look like the real Jerusalem? There's this, you know, water channel, Hezekiah's tunnel. You know, you remember all that stuff, but wow. And there's so many things. The city of Dawood is there, you know, just south of the Temple Mount. They're finding it. They're digging it up. They're finding the foundations of the walls of David's or Dawood's citadel, you know, the city of David, you know, that's what they call it. But it's not in Hebron. And it doesn't say that Abraham was buried in Jerusalem. But they're saying Hebron is Jerusalem, and Abraham's buried there. Well, anyway, it's just really messed up. There's so much confusion, but we're not. I guess the false teachers are supposed to come in like droves, and everybody that can read is supposed to read everything and then believe it. Well, don't believe that stuff. You need to read what Yahuwah says. What he said, and then look around and go, well, that's not what Yahuwah said. Just listen to his word and then compare it. I don't know. But the people are calling me on the phone saying, I just found this out. And they won't necessarily accept me when I say, well, Yahuwah doesn't know anything about this. And it doesn't matter anyway, but, it really doesn't, because when Yahushua grabs us out of the places where he scattered us, and he, at his coming, and takes us back, we're going to be in the new Jerusalem, I don't think they're going to be thinking about the old one anyway. But we know that the city that we call Jerusalem really is the city of Jerusalem. Because where's Bethlehem? Really close by, but it's on the other side of the Dead Sea from Hebron. Anyway, there's all kinds of problems with this new teaching. But there's one fellow that I'm not talking about him personally, but he's out there telling everybody that he found something personally, an old scroll in the land of Babylon, in Iraq somewhere. And he says it doesn't contain all this other stuff, and therefore we don't have to go by any of that, and all these things that we read about in this scripture is really hateful and judgmental and bloody and all this. But this is a very nice, neat text that, it's better. And it's called the original scriptures. I think that's what he's calling it. But
what scrolls is it?
Well, I don't have any idea. I guess it's Bereshith, Genesis.
The Torah.
And then there's like I had a discussion 3 weeks ago, maybe four, with it's obviously an anti-missionary that knows a lot of things about. He's in his early 30s, much like yourself, and he's got the idea that all we need is the 5 books of Moshe. And in other words, right up to the point where they were about to go into the land, and then that's it. There's no more prophets. There's no more information because of one verse. You shall not add and you shall not take away from these words. Well, take that to its logical conclusion. You can't add anything. But what it's talking about is adding to his commandments. You can't add and take away. And that's, of course, what people did anyway, because the Pharisees and rabbinical Judaism is all about men's traditions and supplanting the Torah of Yahuwah. So Yahusha's accusing them of that and calling them serpents, a brood of vipers, because they have, withheld the key of knowledge, which is his name. If you read Psalm 118, the stone that the builders rejected, what would that be? His name. Yeah. Well, we don't want to say that. That's too special. What? Where's that written? Anyway, it's just human tradition.
It says that at the end of Revelation as well. Don't add or take away from this.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's really, there's a lot of false teachers popping up. And, of course, a lot of people accuse me and you of being false teachers because, well, they haven't said this specific thing other than maybe the lunar Sabbathers. We've got, they've got the hidden manna and we don't.
They're just angry because we put a wolfman to it.
Oh, the wolfman. Well, no, I picked that up, that picture of the wolfman and the moon, because of the fact that in the book of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar turns into like a beast, and he's growing his fingernails and his hair, and his whole situation is not recognizing who's in charge.
You can see it happening, can't you? Like an X-Men movie.
Yeah.
Well, you want to talk about tunnels?
Tunnels.
Under Jerusalem, you were talking about tunnels. So
Hezekiah.
Bring that up.
Yeah, well, the reason I brought it up is because it's physical evidence that's underneath the city of Jerusalem. And, you know, that that there's a tunnel that was a channel that's recorded in the scriptures that was dug, and it was expanded on too later, 2 or 3 times. But it was to channel water in case of the city being under siege. You know, when the city was under siege, they had no water supply, so they wanted to make sure that they could get water through a channel from a spring, the Gihon Spring, I think it is. There's another thing going on with some people right there in your home, your part of the world, in Australia. I don't want to mention anyone's name, but I do want to mention that there is a ministry called Hillsong, and they're one of many that are teaching this doctrine, that it's called Chrislam, Christ-lam. It's got Islam in it somehow. Anyway, they're not just them, but others in Christianity are saying to the Islamic world that we worship the same being. So why don't we all get along? Well, it isn't the same being. The original object of worship that the Arabs are worshiping now goes by the proper, well, it isn't even a proper name. It comes from a Hebrew word, Allah. It's a Hebrew word. Aleph, Lamed, Hey, you know, that's a good word, good clean word. It's a Hebrew word. It means high up or mighty one. A high or mighty one, you know, because Al means high or lifted up. And they use this term to refer to the, well, they previously used it to worship the moon. And interestingly enough, they've inherited that symbol. There's a crescent moon. See, a crescent is like a piece of bread that's shaped like the moon's crescent. It's called a croissant. And that symbol is the symbol of their faith. And that symbol is on the chest of a statue that I have it on my website. There's a little statue of rock or stone, and it's a little guy named Alllah. You know, it's the name. And they worship the crescent moon, you know. That was originally what it was. But and in Mecca, they had a box or a cube. It's sort of like 40, 45, or 35, or whatever. It's nearly a cube, called a Kaaba, which means cube. And inside the Kaaba, they originally had 360 idols, you know, images. Right now, they've got inside there, they've got a big metal thing that looks like a female genitalia with a black stone. And on the wall, they've got the sun and the moon. And pretty much nothing else. There's pillars in there, you know, columns. And that's basically it. They took out all the lanterns. And, well, no, they've got lanterns. Excuse me. They took out all the other idols. And I understand they left the one in there because he's the greatest. And that would be Allah of all the others. You know, he's not just the only one. He's just the greatest of all of them. I don't know how it works out. But anyway, this one moon deity used to be the, you know, the, what do you call it? The tribal, kind of like a mascot or a tribal deity of that tribe that Muhammad was from. Muhammad's family, his whole clan, was really into that one, you know. So that's okay, you know. I mean, if you go for that sort of thing. But we were told, on the other hand, see, we weren't told this by our Creator. Our Creator didn't tell us anything about a Kaaba. I mean, a cube. He didn't mention it as a place of worship. He didn't tell us to make idols. He didn't tell us to make much of anything to represent him at all. He said, don't bow down to idols. Well, they bow down from all over the planet towards this. So we're losing this whole list here slowly if we go down here and we compare the religions and the deity behind it. So if you compare Islam with Christianity even, Christianity doesn't obey the first four, but maybe that's why they're confused. because they don't have wisdom. Wisdom is this. So we have a lot of differences. First of all, well, the deity that the Arabs worship tells them that revenge is a dish best served cold, which means, hit them by surprise, make friends with them, and then hit them. And ambushing is fine in Islam, but it's not allowed in Torah. You're not allowed to ambush your enemy from a hiding place. It's not allowed. In fact, one of the things that the Israeli government right now is asking is, does Torah allow for a first strike? We're talking nuclear. Does Torah allow it? And that's a scary thing to be hearing when you're reading the news, because they're asking the rabbis. We have a rabbi, but they're not the rabbi. They're asking their rabbis, the teachers, is it legal, according to Torah, for a first strike? Well, we've already mentioned the Samson option.
Mm.
Do you know what that is?
That's I forgot. It was about a year ago now. Refresh my memory. That's where they if we're going to fall, everyone's going with us, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like a doomsday device. If Israel, the government, is being attacked and they see themselves going down, permanently, then they're going to take everyone else with them that's around them. They're all going to go with them. And that's the nuclear option that they have. It's called the Samson option. Because when Samson was in the temple and his eyes had been put out, and he asked the young man to put his hands on the pillar so he could feel it, and he pushed that very place down, and over 3,000 people, I think it was, died right there, of the highest ranking and wealthiest people in the nation. So, that's what they call it. I'm not calling it that. That's what Israel's calling it, the Samson option. You can Google that. Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It was put to me a few weeks ago by Chris. He said, it just blew my brains out from all the teaching we've done. He said, who is Yahusha? Didn't he declare that he is the door? I said, yeah. And he said, how do you open the door? Don't you need a key? I said, yeah. What's the key? The name. It was just so simple. The name and the door. Like, how do you get? No one comes to the Father but by me. You've got the name and you've got the door. And it was just so simple, and it just blew me away. I thought, that's amazing. And a lot of believers just miss both of them.
Yeah, and we also have Psalm 138, verse 2, isn't it? That says, your name, your word are above all. Yeah. And we always talk about those two things as Nazarene, And that's amazing, too. Now, a lot of people will take this to its logical conclusion and say that we're saying that in order for you to be delivered or to have eternal life, you must know this name. Well, eventually, that would probably not be in our place to say. But Yahusha can make the judgment, because he weighs hearts and minds and searches them. But what he'll do, more than likely, is not include them in the first resurrection. At his coming, those that are prepared with their lamps lit, then they will be ready. The others will say, you're saying that name, I don't know anything about that name. What is that? Oh, you're going to have to go and learn. You're not ready, are you? Well, that's probably what this is, the oil. Because your name is its oil poured forth. And that's why the virgins love you.
So the last So the last resurrection will be basically, it's his call, and it's based upon his level of compassion on every single individual, no matter what belief. Whereas we're aiming for the first resurrection.
Yeah.
Would you say the redemptive feasts are included in that list? would you suggest that if there are believers around you, isn't it written somewhere where all the males over 20 or something had to attend or go up to Jerusalem and attend the feasts 3 times a year, something like that?
Exactly, yeah.
So if you had believers around you in your town or nation, you would get together with them, wouldn't you?
Maybe not all of them, but you'd certainly want to, and you hopefully find each other, because you have to love the redeemed, and hey, you're redeemed. Of course, people have a tendency in their flesh to try to ascertain or determine what people believe, and then they say, well, let me ask you another question. And they start looking, and they're searching for the differences. Like, oh, I found something that we don't agree on. Well, that's the divisive spirit. They want to dismiss somebody because of one thing that they don't agree with, and maybe they're right and maybe they're wrong. But if we were shown what Yahusha has to reveal to us that we have wrong with us, every single one of us would be going, whoa, I was so wrong. Please forgive me. And that forgiveness, let me show you what that word looks like. Forgiveness. That has everything to do with Matthew chapter 18. There's so many things in that one little chapter about forgiveness. The man who owed an infinitely large amount. I mean, it might as well have been infinite. He was never going to be able to pay this amount back. That's the infinite debt we all have. And then when he was going to be thrown into prison with his family, they were going to be tortured, and they said, please, he said, forgive me. I will work even harder. Just give me another chance. And then the owner, the person in charge, said, okay, I'm going to have complete compassion on you. I forgive your whole debt, because of the heart that he was seeing poured out for him. And then that same man that was forgiven that great amount, I mean, he wasn't just going to not go to jail. He was forgiven a whole amount. Then he was going out to see somebody that owed him a little bit. Just a little bit. And then he said, what? You can't pay me? And then he had him taken away. And some other servants saw that and reported it, and then it was bad news. Well, you see, that same thing is going to happen to every one of us. When we look at each other critically, and we say, oh, I see something wrong with you. That's everything about the parables is about the dark eye, the splinter in the eye, all these things. And when we look at other people from the heart in that way, it's going to be bad news for us. But a lot of us do it, One of the things we have to ask ourselves, a lot of Christians feel like they've got all these works, and Yahusha talked about this. They say, hey, we did this and that in your name. These awesome things. Are you telling me that this doesn't matter? He's going to say, depart from me. I never knew you. Because he wasn't in them, controlling them. They were just performing. You could deliver your body to be burned. You could give everything you own to the poor. But if you don't have him, then all your performance is wasted and it's just going to burn up. But what he does through us, that's why he said it's behooving you, or it's going to be beneficial if I go to the Father, because then I'm going to be omnipresent in all of you, and the works that you do corporately will be greater than the works that I have already shown you. And that biggest miracle is being able to talk to somebody and actually share the truth with them and see them change from the inside, because the words that we speak to them, because their hearts are pierced. That's amazing. But forgiveness and compassion for others, and to forgive without end, to have okay, I've forgiven you 7 times, that's it. No, it goes on, and to love them as he loved them, and loves them. So that's all things that they all dovetail together perfectly. All the parables, it's about, what is it about? It's about learning how to love, loving Yahuwah and loving your neighbor, which is everyone. Your enemy is your neighbor. When they said, well, who is my neighbor? Well, that Samaritan? Oh, no, not that. Oh, yeah.
The only way that's going to come forth is if brothers and sisters wake up and realise that Scripture is true, and he says your life is not your own. I bought you with a price. You no longer live. You know, me, myself, Mark, has to die, because me, myself, Mark is a hideous creature who, and we have to die. Like, I can't have my thoughts and opinions and what I would want on a situation or matter. He has to come through me. So I have to check my thoughts and not make sure I'm not being invaded or being emotional, or, and he tests us all the time. He's testing to see if his bride will be faithful, for want of a better word, obedient. It's a really serious walk. I mean, we don't go around being serious to everybody, but it's a really serious. We're going to be tested. It's like we've got to do this. Like, we're not just playing circus here.
No. Look, one of the things that the yoke, Yahusha's yoke, if you read this article, there's a lot of scripture that reveals that yoke is opposed by another yoke, because it's like the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The serpent has a yoke of his own too, and his yoke seems to be really complicated and heavy, and you have to jump through a lot of hoops. And if you study Catholicism and the daughters that came out of her in the Protestants, all the Protestants were also Catholics, and they remain so because of one doctrine, and that is the belief in one God in three persons. That is the definition of Catholicism. Whatever else you add to it or take away from it, if you believe in one God and three persons, then that is what Catholicism is. You don't have to believe me. Look it up. Athanasius is a key word. But anyway, the interesting thing about this is that the yoke of Yahusha is our armor. And it occurred to me that it isn't, we picture it as weaponry, like a belt of truth and a helmet of deliverance and salvation, if you want to use that word, as you remember it, the shield of faith, the sword of the Spirit, the feet shod in boots of peace. But you see, and the breastplate of righteousness, of course, in your heart, covering your heart, righteousness, uprightness, justice, truth, belt of truth. These are components that are just good imagery, but who is it? Is it really just, physical objects? No, it's him. He is the armor of light, and he's indwelling us. And we are protected from invasion in our house, our vessel. You were talking about demonic attacks. Well, the pillar of fire is pictured in the wilderness when the armies of Israel were being attacked by the Egyptian army. The strongest army on the planet was coming at his children that he loved. Love intervened. It stood between them as fire. And they couldn't go past it. It was probably a pass. They couldn't go around it. They were going, we're blocked. It was love. His name was in the pillar of fire. And he showed them some serious love there, but that love still available, and it's in us. It appeared on the sun, above the heads of these 120 Nazarene in the temple, the Shekinah, the flames of fire. That was another Shekinah appearance. We've talked about the Shekinah before. There's a study on YouTube, but it's a really interesting thing to consider the Shekinah as being the dwelling place, because the word Mishkan is the root of the word Shekinah. Mishkan means dwelling place, and it means the dwelling place of his name. So his name is infused in our minds, in our foreheads. And so he's dwelling there, and by dwelling in our vessel, we are actually clothed with him. And that's, you've heard the phrase, put on Christ, put on Mashiach. You put on Mashiach by taking him into your vessel. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. What door? Well, the door to your heart, the door to your inner being, your inner self, the real you. So he comes in and he merges with you. And so it's no longer you who live, but he lives in you. And that's the key to the whole thing. It is Mashiach in you, your hope of esteem. And that would be the deliverance. That's when you are officially inheriting eternal life. And you go and obey. And you obey not in your strength, but in the power of his name and his spirit, which is indwelling you to empower you. So he changed your whole character is what he changes.
It's been amazing today, brother. I'm having a ball, but I'm going to have to say goodbye shortly because my sons are starting to roam the corridors. We're going it's coming up to 6:30 now. So we're going to an immersion today. Two ladies are being immersed. Jess, my apprentice at the salon. Chris and Victoria had been chatting for her for a little while, and her mother for a few years. And they've finally made the decision that they want to get immersed today, mother and daughter. So that's very exciting.
Yes.
So we pray it all goes well, and two new beings in immersion.
I want to remind you, Mark, I'm a grandfather, and I'm a father, and you're a father. And maybe one day, if Yahuwah blesses you, you'll be a father too. But whatever was going on there with your children, remember.
I understand.
I know you're fun. But it sure was great seeing you again. Yeah. I've been through some stuff. I don't want to go into that, but we've been just absolutely, terrified. But we had trusted, and everything's working out well.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw it. She's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, she's wonderful.
So, give her another 50 years.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's so much stuff to chat about. We'll see how we go. Maybe we'll chat next week or the week after. So.
Why not? Yeah, let's try it. I think we're going to be able to be rested up by then. Yeah. Right.
Sure.
We had a lot of sword battles.
And the more I'm going through the scriptures a lot more now, the more questions come up. I think, I'm going to ask to do that. So.
Did you get my last file that I emailed to you?
The Basora?
Yeah.
Yes, I've saved that to my computer.
Like 3 days ago?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Wonderful.
Well, we're about to talk to a publisher, a printer actually, and we're talking to a couple of them. One of them here is in the United States, and the other one's based in Honolulu. But we're going to try to get 1,000 made at one time so we can get the price down.
Yes.
And we'll have all the typos out of it, and it'll have a new cover.
Wonderful. Very exciting.
Yes, it is. It's going through its second printing now. I mean, it's not done, but we have to raise some money somehow. I don't know how, but we need to get about 1,000 of them made to make the cost really come down, instead of just making 24 at a time. It's really expensive.
Yeah.
The copy.
Well, if anyone would like to donate to the project,
yeah, they can certainly contact me or you, and we'll we'll channel it. We'll figure it out. So if you have any way of helping, let us know. So I guess I'll let you go for tonight.
Yeah, wonderful. Enjoy the rest of your Sabbath, mate.
I will. Thank you. And it was great seeing you.
Yeah, you too.
We love you.
Love you too.
Okay.
See you shortly.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
They keep repeating these things, saying, Lord is your name, and so they shun you. Substitution ain't the way. Gotta live in Torah. Torah, 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 Galilee, Torah zone. Usher in the latter rain. So the world's gonna know your name.
You're making love to demons in the synagogue tonight. Yeah, must be a season of the witch. Must be a season of the witch.
I listen to lies, biding my time, drinking more wine. After 2730 years, I am free to know who you are. This lost sheep has come to his senses. The awakening brought me this far. 'Cause I am falling deeper in love with you.
He was pierced for our transgression, bruised for our iniquity. The punishment that brought our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. Through his blood we have been sealed. The hand that passed us over crushed our king. The perfect offering. You are
You're the hope that I
the
cling
hope
to.
that I cling to.
You mean to me.
You mean more than this world,
More than this
to
world,
me.
yes you are.
I wouldn't trade you
I would not
for
trade you.
silver or gold.
I wouldn't trade you.
We overcome by the blood of the Lamb. We overcome by the word of our witness. Longing for my King, Yahusha, flowing with your sheep. Yahusha, we are witnesses and watchmen of Torah. We are olive trees with a word from Yahusha. Where the scattered prodigals, the house of Ephraim. Name of you, Yerushalayim. Take us to that city, Yerushalayim. Shofars are down Yerushalayim. With love and light eternal. Yerushalayim. With Yahusha. Prophesy, dry bones rise. Speak forth your word, oh Yah.
We have direct access to King Yahusha. By belief we gather to King Yahusha.
Return to redemption's path. Return to me.
Lamp of life, the lamp of life, go the lamp of life, lamp of life, 'cause he was a monster, the Constantine monster, he was a monster, he changed the times. Oh, Lord, rise up. I saw my teacher, his name, and so much in his Torah. He wrote them in my heart and then made me his servant. I say, I love Yahusha. I love